call this meeting of the September 25th Jamestown City Council voting session to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Sheldon.
Here.
Brackman.
Here.
Karuba. Here. Reynolds.
Present.
Faulkner.
Here.
Eklund. Here. DeVersa.
Here.
Russell.
Here.
And President Jones.
Here. This time, we ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation which will be delivered tonight by the Reverend Dr. William Blair of the New Creation Assembly of God.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we give thanks and praise to you for every measure of support and provision that we receive. That the citizens of this community enjoy peace, prosperity, and a quiet life. That's our prayer. That our leaders and civil servants who labor on our behalf receive what is due them in both resources and respect. That is our prayer also. Give us the blessing of your guidance and presence, that our city may excel in every meaningful way. Cause this business session to be successful, and the various participants who have come here today find reward in being a part of such a process. We pray together, and we honor you. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Blair. Do I have approval of the minutes from the August 28th voting session? So moved. Second. Do you have any messages from the mayor?
We do. Council members, in pursuance of the authority vested in me by the charter of said city, I do hereby nominate Rick Miller, 126 Hall Avenue, to be appointed a member of the Jamestown Housing Authority in and for the city of Jamestown, New York. The term for which said appointment is to be made will expire September 30th, 2028. Edward A. Sundquist.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to suspend the rules and vote on the appointment? So moved by Councilwoman Eklund. Will clerk please poll the council on the suspension of the rules?
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman. Aye. Karuba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Yeah.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund. Aye. DeVersa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Jones.
Aye. Do I have a motion to approve the appointment? So moved by Councilwoman Karuba. Second by Councilwoman Brackman. Clerk, please poll the council on the appointment.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman. Aye. Karuba. Aye. Reynolds.
Yeah.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund. Aye. DeVersa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Jones.
Aye. Thank you. At this time, we give opportunities for people to address the city council. If you'd like to address the council, you can step up to one of the two mics. Please give us your name, your home address, and limit your remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Is there anyone here that would like to address the council this evening?
I'm Champ 225 Bowman Street, Jamestown. We've got three things tonight that I would like to present, at least in a format that I believe needs a discussion, certainly tonight, on the not-for-profits. I don't judge not-for-profits in the sense of not applying for public money, but there are, in the American Rescue Plan, as you all know by now, there's a platform of how that should be dispersed and accountability for it. What I mean by that is that the city is the overall recipient. You've heard me talk about this many times. The sub-recipients are all those that you give money to. The beneficiaries are all those that benefit from the sub-recipient's project. Unless that alignment works, so you know who it is that benefits, both in terms of the population of the city, the types of people that need a certain aspect associated with the program. All of it then becomes just a pass-through of funds. So the accountability factor is extremely important in the American Rescue Plan. If we don't have accountability of the public money, then we have no trail, no evaluation, and no return on investment. What is that return on investment? That's for you to decide, not for me as a citizen. But it is a responsibility for a citizen when you have a problem with something, especially when you have the separation of city and church. That's supposed to be something to be acknowledged, that we're not in the business with public money funding church projects. That never was the case. If the church wants to do a program and have the consensus of the community that that's viable and valuable, that's one thing. But historically, renewing a church is not in the spirit of American Rescue Plan. It just isn't. So why don't we do it to the other churches? Maybe they didn't put an application in. But I know of no time in the past where we really have gone in and have funded a church structural project. Now, they've gotten money in the past, significant amounts of money. So, do they need this now? And again, remember, the American Rescue Plan was but for. That argument should always be in place here. In other words, if they don't get the money, they can't do the project. Simple as that. So it's up to you tonight to decide and wade through the not-for-profits, not that we don't need them, but there also is a caveat in there that states, do they pay taxes? Do they acknowledge the recipients that are going to be the beneficiaries? How is that all going to work? In addition today, I have to applaud Jeff Russell, a member of the BPU board, that asked Dave Leathers, who was very disingenuous with his comment about whether or not the BPU can actually do security lighting at the viaduct. I believe they can. It's just that it was a question they weren't willing to really fully answer. So the decision on spectrum lighting, in addition, what I mean by that, it's variations of lighting. And you've got a great expert who can talk about how does that affect reptile life, plant life, and birds. So when you have a various spectrum of these flashing or non-flashing alternate lighting, there is an effect on that type of wildlife. The third comment is this: it was asked by me to ask the city council by a lady who doesn't want to ask questions, but she's concerned. And if I understand this correctly, if a vehicle blocks the sidewalk, it's illegal. Am I correct on that? If a motorcycle blocks the sidewalk, it's illegal. Yes. Well, now we have a situation where we have electric scooters blocking sidewalks. This lady came across one, didn't realize it, and almost fell. So she asked me whether or not can those electric scooters be parked in the terrace rather than on the sidewalk? And if they're not, can they be ticketed because they leave them there and somebody else got to use them? So I think maybe there's a point in time that we acknowledge that a piece of equipment that's not being used should not be in the sidewalk. So that's my final comment, and I rest my points.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council this evening?
Anthony Toda, I live at 144 Clifton Avenue in Jamestown. First, I'd like to echo Mr. Champ's opinion. Separation between church and state goes back. It's a fundamental principle of our Constitution, and it must be kept separate. I'm making my comments based on recent articles in the Jamestown Post-Journal. The first is the front page article dated September 13, 2023, entitled Sundquist, Wendell Say Migrant Resources Thin. First, does any Democrat know that someone crossing the border without using a custom checkpoint is making illegal entry into the U.S., regardless of documentation? Mayor Sundquist fails to state that in the article, but addressed the illegal immigrants as asylum seekers instead. Around 7.25 million people have illegally entered the U.S. under the Biden administration without necessary vetting and the inability to care for them. Now New York City wants to arrange to pay Jamestown landlords money to participate in this illegal trafficking and housing of illegal immigrants. I continue to say the word illegal because no one is vetting illegals to verify their purported status. Supporting illegals is just an outright total disregard for federal and constitutional principles. We have a housing maintenance problem in Jamestown, yet there is still some consideration for illegal immigrants by our own mayor. Illegal immigration is a federal issue, not a state issue, where Governor Kathy Hochul, as a Democrat, has facilitated illegal trafficking of illegal immigrants to Erie County, where they are committing crime, as they would be doing in Jamestown if there was if they were in this situation where they came here. Senator Schumer and Gillibrand and Congressman Langworthy have failed to address these issues. Why aren't these representatives protecting our constitutional sovereignty? And why are these representatives, at least in my case, affording privileges to illegals while continuing to oppress my own rights? My next comment concerns the local law passed by this council in August 2023, as reported by the Jamestown Post-Journal in the September 21, 2023 article. This law calls for bench warrants and arrests for housing violations. After over 20 years of neglect by the council and the last two city administrations regarding an ineffective housing committee, failure to seek a remedy for poor housing, failure to hire qualified personnel to evict deadbeat tenants, and withholding of landlord-tenant funding by Governor Kathy Hochul, this council has proposed an unconstitutional, oppressive law that I hope is challenged in the courts, because bench warrants and arrests cannot be applied to most housing violations. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council?
Scott Axelson, 402 Park Street. First time I've ever been to one of these meetings, so might be a bit nervous. I'd like to ask a question because I've talked to Town of Elgin Sergeant. I have a business over in West Elgin on Fairmont, but I commute back and forth, especially in the evenings, Fairmont, 3rd Street, Foot. There's an awful lot of bicycle, e-bike, scooter, and skateboard traffic on sidewalks on the wrong side of the road, especially after dark, no lighting. And I think it's a very big safety hazard. I know some of that can be enforced through the police departments locally, but I've had more than one time coming home in the evening where I've been almost cut off or had to stop because someone would not pay attention to the directions because they're going the wrong way on the streets. There's actually, I know, some type of e-commerce from Walmart heading into the city with bicycles with trailers behind them that are doing like the food deliveries, but they're on the wrong sides all the time, no lighting or very little lighting, and I just think it's a big safety concern. Also with these new scooters, someone mentioned about seeing them on the sidewalks. Of course, I live on the south side. I was going up Forest the other morning. 3 of them were right in the middle of the sidewalk, no terrace there at all to use, but they were right across the sidewalk, so someone who was maybe handicapped or walking would have to walk into a yard and move them out of the way. So I do think there has to be some type of rules where there are no grass terraces where they can be positioned. I've also seen some people riding 2 at a time and things like that, which is not legal, but it's happening. But the really thing that concerns me is some of these motorized scooters that are not the ones that the city has got involved with, but some of these electric bikes, they go faster than traffic. I've seen them going up Fairmont faster than 35 miles an hour. No helmets, no anything. And I just think it should be addressed somehow that maybe the police could look a little bit better at it and how it can be addressed so that, because, you know, somebody innocent driving is going to hit somebody and then it's our insurance, our liabilities, costs more for everybody. But it's definitely becoming more and more pronounced, especially west side of Jamestown, Jamestown West, over towards Walmart. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any presentation of petitions or communications? Seeing no petitions or communications, we'll move on to reports from our standing committees. Our first committee will be the only committee tonight that has resolutions, will be the Finance Committee. The first three resolutions will be sponsored by Councilwoman Perruzza.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a resolution authorizing payment of the regular audit.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman.
Aye.
Karuba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund.
Aye.
Diversa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Verizon Wireless for an addition of equipment on the roof of City Hall and amended lease agreement.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman.
Aye.
Karuba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund.
Aye.
Diversa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Child and Family Services Incorporated for the purpose of providing an employee assistance program for the period of November 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2024.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman.
Aye.
Karuba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund.
Aye.
Diversa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Wilson.
Aye. The next three resolutions will be sponsored by Councilwoman Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with the Chautauqua Watershed Conservancy for Phase 2 of the Chautauqua River.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman.
Aye.
Karuba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
No.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund.
Aye.
Diversa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a resolution designating $224,500.00 in American Rescue Plan Act Water, Sewer, and Broadband funds for the purpose of the Chautauqua River restoration.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman.
Nay.
Karuba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
No.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund.
Aye.
Diversa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a resolution authorizing K-9 Officer James Latimer and K-9 Grimm to attend the New York State Homeland Security and Emergency Services 2023 Excelsior Challenge.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman.
Aye.
Karuba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund.
Aye.
Diversa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
And President Wilson.
Aye. The next resolution will be sponsored by Councilwoman Perruzza.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to read just a little bit so people understand as it wasn't clarified. Whereas the City of Jamestown in the 2018-2019 Annual Action Plan allocated $115,000 of 2019 CDBG funds to be used for the Downtown Handicapped Accessibility Improvement Program, and whereas 100% of the allocated funds for Downtown Handicapped Accessibility Improvement Program has been expended, and whereas this substantial amendment establishes the reallocation of 2019 CDBG funds from target areas green lining facade improvement program to the 2019 CDBG Downtown Handicapped Accessibility Program, therefore let it be resolved that the mayor be and is hereby authorized and directed to submit the substantial amendment of the fiscal year 2019 annual action plan to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Yes, I would like to comment. I really appreciate the fact that the city and the Department of Development are recognizing the need to continue to improve handicap accessibility in the downtown area. And it also helps the businesses to allow more individuals to benefit their services. So we appreciate everything that you're doing to improve that. So thank you for the accessibility.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just for clarity, the backup to the grant reads, and Crystal, just to make sure I'm right, that it's $103,429.00.
Correct. Yep.
Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Aye.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
President Schultz.
Aye. That concludes our pre-filed resolutions. We do have several in new business, but we'll get to the bottom of the page for that. Do we have any report of special committees? Seeing none, any reports of city officers? We have any reports from council persons on administrative boards?
I guess does a Fenton count?
It sure does.
All right, then I would like to mention that the Fenton is going to be sponsoring Saints and Sinners the weekend of the 13th, 14th, and the following weekend. The carriage tours are all sold out, but they still have walking tours available. If you have not been involved with it, it's wonderful. It's a great experience. I encourage anyone of the public, including council members, to go. It's a very cool event and very, very much appreciated. It's also a way for the history to come alive with Jamestown. They do indicate the saints and the sinners of the city, and some are very interesting stories that a lot of you have probably never heard, so anything you can do to support it is appreciated. Thank you.
It's a very nice event that they have. I always thought, are we the saints or the sinners? That's the one.
I don't know, we haven't died yet, so.
Is there any other reports from council persons on boards? Okay, seeing none. Is there any unfinished business? Moving on to new business, we do have several resolutions. The first three will be sponsored by Councilwoman Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. President. Resolved that the Fire Lieutenants Keith Folsom, Robert Bailey Jr., Daniel Balling, Eric Herman, Robert Smith, and Jeffrey Hatch be hereby authorized to attend the New York State Office of Fire Prevention and Control Fire Officer II training program as conducted by the New York State Academy of Fire Science located at 600 College Avenue, Montour Falls, New York 14865, beginning October 16, 2023, and concluding October 20th, 2023, with fees and expenses paid pursuant to Section 77B of the General Municipal Laws of the State of New York.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Aye.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
President Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whereas City Council approved the American Rescue Plan allocation funds to accommodate for $500,000 and no cents towards the housing repair mini grant, and whereas the Department of Development is requesting an increase of $30,000 and no cents to assist 12 additional properties in the city of Jamestown for a final allocation of $530,000 and no cents, and therefore be it resolved that $30,000 and no cents in additional funding be allocated to the purpose of funding an additional 12 and final applications for the ARPA Housing Repair Mini Grant for a total of 212 properties assisted throughout the city.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I just want to comment that I'm pleased to see this on tonight's agenda. Since receiving the ARPA funding, I've always pushed that this money needs to be given back to the taxpayers. This is taxpayers' money. This is not a gift from Washington, D.C. as a result of COVID. So I've been an advocate from day one that these funds be pushed out to the taxpayers, and I'm happy to see this on the agenda this evening.
Thank you.
I'll second that. Thanks, Jeff.
I'd also like to comment that actually it provides seed money. Many of the projects that were undertaken incurred a lot more than $2,500 worth of expense. So much like the Jamestown Renaissance program does in neighborhoods where they provide some of the funding and then the owners put in much more of the funding, this is a great way to continue to improve the neighborhoods and provide the seed money to get people working on projects and improve their properties, which benefits all of us. I've heard it's furnaces, windows, energy efficiency in some cases, so it benefits all of us in the community to see people improving their properties. So thank you very much. I'm very pleased to support this.
Any other comments, questions? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Aye.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
and President Schultz.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. And seeing that that resolution passed, Resolution 10 is designating $30,000 and no cents in American Rescue Plan Act Healthy Communities and Neighborhood Funds the purpose of funding a home improvement grant.
Thank you. Any other additional comments or questions? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon.
Aye.
Brackman.
Aye.
Ruba.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Faulkner.
Aye.
Eklund.
Aye.
DeVersa.
Aye.
Russell.
Aye.
President Bose.
Aye. The next resolution will be sponsored by Councilman Russell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Jamestown Local Development Corporation at its meeting held on September 20, 2023 gave preliminary approval for the grant to the YMCA Incorporated $200,000 and no cents for the purpose of the construction of the new YMCA facility. Whereas the ratification of any American Rescue Plan grant funds over the $100,000 and no cents requires the vote of the City Council of Jamestown, New York. Now therefore be it resolved that the Jamestown City Council hereby approves the Jamestown Local Development Corporation grant to the YMCA Incorporated of $200,000 and no cents for the American Rescue Plan Act nonprofit assistance grant.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
I just want to make a comment that people like to throw around the term return on investment. I wish that we could be giving more money to this project. You want to talk about return on investment. This is an organization that serves the entire population in the city of Jamestown, from the very young to the very old. From babysitting services to feeding persons to education. So I just wish that we were able or were in a position to grant more money to this project. It's kind of near and dear to my heart to see this project go through.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Just as, go ahead.
I'd like to add that I'm not pleased with the $200,000 allotment. All along, I felt very comfortable and very forceful in the sense that the Y has such an impact of our young people that are our residents and plays a big part in our community. I think they should be a standalone entity when they're applying money through the city and the city through DPW and BPU. Add up all the costs that we might be able to do in kind. So I'm $200 isn't going to do it, and it's. I know we'll get it in return if they don't raise the $30 million, but I think they need to come back to council and ask for a lot more money and have some numbers from BPU and DPW on what we can do in kind to make this project float. I'm just saying $200,000 I'm not making.
Okay, thank you.
The only reason I have reservations about this is because the management is really held in the city of Buffalo, New York now, because they are outsourcing the management, which doesn't always bode well for the city when the management is not local. The other concern I have brought up a number of times about collaboration. We have a community college with some facilities. This could be a win-win for both if there was collaboration. And the other concern I have is the amount. You know, when you talk about giving back to the community, there is a concern. We have to be mindful of the taxpayers. And although it doesn't, I'm not disparaging anything that they do, there are a lot of other worthwhile organizations that are participating, and $1 million is a lot of money when you talk about trying to get more. So I do have some reservations, but and I do recognize the work that they do in the community, but those issues do concern me that there has been no attempt to collaborate. And actually, thirdly, was the reuse of that building. I've heard nothing about what the plan is for that building in that location and what will happen to it. We have a number of vacant buildings, and there's been no plan coming forward that I have heard when they vacate that building, what the plan is to continue the use of it or what they will do with it. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I also have some reservations, and I agree. I mean, the YMCA has been very involved in the community, and I think my concern is just the accessibility to the people of the community, as far as where they're intending to build the Y, as far as kids being able to get there. I mean, right now, they can come from the high school, they can come from several of the different schools. So that's my only concern, is just the accessibility of the actual proposed building for the new YMCA.
Thank you. Anybody else? Just as a point of reference, I will be recusing myself from the vote as a member of the Board of Directors of the YMCA's. Will the clerk please poll the council on my recusal?
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Aye.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
and Jones.
Aye. The clerk please poll the council on the resolution.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
No.
Faulkner,
Aye.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
No.
Russell,
Aye.
okay.
That resolution is passed. We'll move on to resolution 12, which will be sponsored by Councilwoman Karuba.
Whereas the Board of Directors of the Jamestown Local Development Corporation at its meeting held on September 20th, 2023, gave preliminary approval for the grant to Jamestown City Center Development Incorporated of $200,000 and no cents for the purpose of funding the construction of the Kids Zone. Whereas the ratification of any American Rescue Plan grant funds over $100,000 and no cents requires a vote of the City Council of Jamestown, New York. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Jamestown City Council hereby approves the Jamestown Local Development Corporation grant to Jamestown Center City Development Corporation Incorporated of $200,000 and no cents for the American Rescue Plan Act nonprofit assistance grant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this one? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Aye.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
President Jones.
Aye. Resolution's passed. Councilwoman Eklund will sponsor the next resolution. Next two, sorry.
Thank you. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Jamestown Local Development Corporation in its meeting held on September 20th, 2023, gave preliminary approval for the grant to the YWCA Incorporated of $145,714 and no cents for the purpose of funding the YWCA's program for female youth ages 14 to 19 to empower healthy decision-making and leadership skills. Whereas the ratification of any American Rescue Plan grant funds over $100,000 and no cents requires the vote of the City Council of Jamestown, New York. Now therefore be it resolved that the Jamestown City Council hereby approves the Jamestown Local Development Corporation grant to the YWCA Incorporated of $145,714 and no cents for the American Rescue Plan Act nonprofit assistance grant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Mr. President, after consulting with Corporation Counsel Romando, I will be recusing myself on this vote due to an internal conflict on an issue.
Thank you. The clerk, please poll the council on Councilwoman Russell's recusal.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Aye.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Aye.
Russell,
Aye.
and President Jones.
Aye. Clerk, please poll the council on the resolution.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Aye.
Karuba,
Aye.
Reynolds,
Yes.
Faulkner,
No.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Aye.
and President Jones.
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Jamestown Local Development Corporation at its meeting held September 20th, 2023, gave preliminary approval for the grant to the Chautauqua Opportunities Incorporated of $181,393 and no cents for the purpose of funding the Chautauqua Opportunities development of a 12-unit, 18-bed homeless shelter for women. Whereas the ratification of any American Rescue Plan grant funds over $100,000 and no cents requires the vote of the City Council of Jamestown, New York. Now therefore be it resolved that the Jamestown City Council hereby approves the Jamestown Local Development Corporation's grant to the Chautauqua Opportunities Incorporated of $181,393.00 for the American Rescue Plan Act Nonprofit Assistance Program.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Mr. President, I need to recuse myself as I am a member of the Board of Directors of Chautauqua Opportunities.
I'll just add that there's a massive need for this in our community. As a police officer for the city of Jamestown for 2 decades, there were often many times where we didn't have a place to take women in our community. We had a men's shelter. The only other place that we had for women was the Agnes home. So this is greatly needed in our community, and I'm glad to see it here this evening.
Thank you. Anything else before we have a vote on the recusal of Councilwoman Eklund, sorry. Right.
Councilmember Sheldon?
Aye.
Brackman?
Aye.
Karuba?
I'm just going to vote on my
You
recusal.
got
Aye.
You don't have to.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Faulkner?
Aye.
Eklund?
Aye.
Diversa?
Aye.
Russell?
Aye.
And President Knowles?
Aye. Clerk, please poll the council on the resolution.
Councilmember Sheldon?
Aye.
Brackman?
Aye.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Faulkner?
Aye.
Eklund?
Aye.
Diversa?
Aye.
Russell?
Aye.
And President Knowles?
Aye. Resolution is passed.
Could I just please note that that shelter will be staffed 24 hours a day, and they will be providing services to the women. Thank you for voting for it.
You're welcome. Our next resolution will be sponsored by Councilman Russell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Jamestown Local Development Corporation at its meeting on September 20th, 2023 gave preliminary approval for the grant to Robert H. Jackson Center Incorporated of $200,000 for the purpose of renovations for Kappa Theater, coinciding with the acquisition of a Director of Marketing and Communications and Director of Programming in order to drive more visitors and enhance visitor experience at the center. Whereas the ratification of any American Rescue Plan grants over $100,000 requires the vote of the City Council of Jamestown, New York. Now therefore be it resolved that the Jamestown City Council hereby approves the Jamestown Local Development Corporation grant to Robert H. Jackson Center Incorporated of $200,000 for the American Rescue Plan Act Nonprofit Assistance Grant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon?
Aye.
Brackman?
Aye.
Karuba?
Aye.
Reynolds?
No.
Faulkner?
Nay.
Eklund?
Aye.
Diversa?
No.
Russell?
Aye.
President Knowles?
Aye. Aye. Resolution is passed. The next resolution will be sponsored by Councilwoman Eklund.
Thank you, Mr. President. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Jamestown Local Development Corporation at its meeting held on September 20th, 2023, gave preliminary approval for the grant to the National Comedy Center Incorporated of $200,000 for the purpose of funding marketing initiatives that will enable the National Comedy Center to expand their reach into new markets in order to generate more visitors and tourism to Jamestown. Whereas the ratification of any American Rescue Plan grant funds over $100,000 requires the vote of the City Council of Jamestown, New York. Now therefore be it resolved that the Jamestown City Council hereby approves the Jamestown Local Development Corporation grant to the National Comedy Center Incorporated of $200,000 for the American Rescue Plan Act Nonprofit Assistance Grant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon?
Nay.
Brackman?
Nay.
Karuba?
Nay.
Reynolds?
No.
Faulkner?
No.
Eklund?
Aye.
Diversa?
No.
Russell?
Aye.
President Knowles?
Aye. Resolution is defeated. The next resolution will be sponsored by Councilwoman Karuba.
Whereas the Board of Directors, thank you, Mr. President. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Jamestown Local Development Corporation at its meeting held on September 20th, 2023, gave preliminary approval for the grant to St. Luke's Episcopal Church Incorporated of $200,000 for the purpose of funding the bell tower restoration. St. Luke's plans to utilize the bell tower interior space, once repaired, to create a year-round agricultural program for those suffering from food insecurities. Whereas the ratification of any American Rescue Plan grant funds over $100,000 and no cents requires a vote of the City Council of Jamestown, New York. Now therefore be it resolved that the Jamestown City Council hereby approves the Jamestown Local Development Corporation grant to St. Luke's Episcopal Church Incorporated of $200,000 and no cents for the American Rescue Plan Act nonprofit assistance grant.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Clerk, please poll the council.
Councilmember Sheldon,
Aye.
Brackman,
Nay.
Karuba,
Nay.
Reynolds,
No.
Faulkner,
Nay.
Eklund,
Aye.
Diversa,
Nay.
Russell,
Nay.
and President Dose.
Aye. Resolution is defeated. And that concludes our resolutions under new business. Is there any other new business to come before the council this evening? Just a couple of comments that I'd like to make. Sorry about that. This evening, the council had a number of resolutions in front of them for nonprofits. And there's been a lot of discussion in the community about giving some of the ARPA money to nonprofits. And I think, as eloquently was said by Councilman Russell and others, about some of the work that nonprofits do in our community, whether it's the YMCA, whether it's the WCA, whether it's COI, all of those, they provide assistance to all walks of life in our community. And we went through this process. I know that the need out there is great. We also passed over $500,000 for our housing and neighborhoods this evening. Over the course of the last few years, we've spent millions of dollars on neighborhoods, on housing, on public safety, on manpower, capital needs, equipment, building and grounds. We've tried to spread this out. The program was created to assist some of the nonprofits who do provide mission and good to our community. All of these did. There were 8 that actually applied. The ones that were on tonight to be voted on were ones that obviously were over the $100,000 threshold that by our charter has to be voted on by the city council. And again, there's a lot of debate in the community about where that money should go, how much they should get, and I know that all of those nonprofits actually asked for more. Many of them did. And whether it's the YMCA, they initially asked for $2 million. The zone asked for more. Others had asked for more. And again, the JLDC put together a package, and our Department of Development put together a package that there were application process, they were scored, there were return on investments that were looked at. This wasn't just people coming in asking for money and people just giving it out. We went through a very lengthy, well over a 2-year process to put a program together that was as fair and as equitable as we could possibly make it. And then have to come back, there was actually an ask for well over $2 million. I think it was 2.5, 2.7 in asking, they had asked for that much money, that the nonprofits. We had to go back as a JLDC and whittle that back down to keep it under the 1.5 that was initially allocated by the city. So very difficult decisions to make. The JLDC board had passed those. Most of them did pass through the council this evening. The 2 that did not, the question now is we do have $400,000 that did not pass this council this evening. So that money will go back to the drawing board and figure out where we want to allocate that nearly $500,000 that didn't get allocated this evening. Whether it would go back to another program in a nonprofit or go back to the general ARPA fund to be used for other items that would be necessary, possibly a bond that may be sitting in front of us. And so again, a lot of difficult decisions, and I want to applaud the council for working through those, asking a lot of questions, and we all may not agree on all the decisions that are made, but just to try to work through that process. It's been very difficult to try to figure out how to spread this money out and get it in the hands of people that do a great deal for this community. And again, the nonprofits in this community do a lot. They feed people, they care for people, all walks of life, rich, poor, black, white, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. Many of these nonprofits do the work that we as a government and other entities cannot do in this community. And so I don't think it's a reach or an ask to give some of this money to nonprofits to fulfill the mission that they do. And so I just wanted to get that out there, and I want to applaud the work of the council for vetting through that process. And I know it was difficult decisions. And again, I said all along that not everyone will be happy with decisions that are made. There are people that want more money for certain things, people that want no money for certain things, or less money for certain things. It's very difficult to work through, but I think this council has worked through that. We're down to $1.2 million, and now with this extra $400,000, just over $1.5 million left to allocate, and that ARPA funds will be expended. So we still have a lot of work to do in looking at the possibility of a bond coming up, and what we're going to spend that on, and how much of that should be allocated towards that bond or for other items in our community that need to be looked at. So again, thanks a lot. Thanks to the staff for working through that. I know it's been a lot, and we'll continue to work through it with the little bit that we have left.
Well said.
Thank you. Is there anything else? If not, our meeting's adjourned.